Hello from Lisbon. My name is Carla Farinha. I hope you are having an interesting congress and a great time in the beautiful city of Bogotá. The theme of my communication is Education for Sustainable Development through Policies and Strategies in the Public Portuguese Higher Education. What we want to know is the key actors' opinion. This is part of my PhD thesis, and the co-authors of my communication are Professor Sandra Caeiro and Ulisses Azeiteiro. My presentation is organized in 5 topics, which are general and specific aims, methods, results, conclusions, and next steps. The general aim is to assess how the sustainability was integrated in the universities in Portugal through its institutional strategies and policies, considering the goals of decade for educational for sustainable development, which is called DEDS, from 2005-2014. And the specific aim is how and the extent to which the Portuguese governments and the Ministry of Science, Technology and Higher Education integrated the sustainability in their plans, programs, and policies from 2 complementary analyses. Documentation produced in the period 2005-2014 and from the key actors' point of view or perspective. For this, we used a convenient sample of 15 key actors of decision-making processes, but we only interviewed 7 people. The interviews took place from October to December 2016, and each interview lasted 15 minutes. We predicted 1 hour. Some lasted 45 minutes and some lasted more than 1 hour. And the number of requests varied from 1 to 6, but the mode was 6. It was not so easy to get this key actor's opinion. This was an exploratory study with mixed structures interviews, and the interviewing preferred mode was face-to-face, even though we sometimes use Skype. In case of visibility of any of the interviews, all the interviews were audio recorded and transcribed with the permission of the key actors. The quantitative aspects were treated by descriptive analysis, and the qualitative aspects were treated by content analysis. We used N Vivo 11. Who were these key actors? Education, Science and Higher Education Ministers. Ministers General Secretary. General Director of Higher Education. And we have the second type. Chairpersons of the Portuguese University Rectors. Council representing Portuguese universities chancellors. And the third type. Higher Education Institutional and non-governmental key persons who designed and implemented education for sustainable development in Portuguese public universities. For that, we had an interview script with research questions applied in this study. Here in the slide, we only present the questions yes or no to understand the integration of sustainability in the plans, programs or policies in the governmental, ministerial and Portuguese University Rectors Council, as well as in the public universities implementation. Our first question was, and I'm quoting, according to 2005 International Implementation Scheme, the Education for Sustainable Development Decade 2005-2014 should have been implemented by member state. From your point of view, did the Portuguese government integrate the sustainability in their plans, programs or policies? Yes or no? We altogether added 19 questions, 5 of which were dichotomic. It was a yes or a no. The others were questions that allowed us a more open conversation as we went further to understand how was implementation done, which were the relevant documents, who were the intervenants in the sustainability implementation process. Lastly, we had a question about the decade 2005-2014 impact in the Portuguese society to get the key actors' opinion. The results concerning a global approach in sustainability implementation, bearing in mind key actors' opinion, is 4 out of 7 of the interviewees agreed on the Portuguese government integrate the sustainability in their plans, programs or policies according to 2005 International Implementation Scheme, the Indication for Sustainable Development Decade, which means the period 2005-2014, but weren't capable to say how. 1 out of 7 of the key actors confirmed that the Ministry or Secretary of State, General Direction of Higher Education, Decade of Education for Sustainable Development 2005-2014 in Portugal, or Portuguese University Directors Council developed a strategy to implement sustainability in their plans, programs or policies. And 1 out of 7 of the interviewees agreed on the public universities integration of sustainability implementation process from the ministry to direct transpose to university strategic plans. And last result that we obtained was 1 out of 7 of the interviewees agreed on the public universities integration of sustainability implementation process from the ministry to direct transpose to university strategic plans, and these to the university academic activity plans. And the last, but not the least, 1 out of 7 of the key actors are confirmed the knowledge of the document UNESCO National Commission for Decade for Education for Sustainable Development 2005-2014 contributions for its dynamization in Portugal 2005-2006, who was coordinated by Professor Luisa Schmidt, one of the documents produced in the period that we just observed, which was analyzed by us. So this was the major results that we just obtained. As one of the interviews referred that the rectoral teams were very important regarding the environmental and sustainability thematic, but in Portuguese University Rectors Council's case, Professor António Rendas from New University of Lisbon was very proactive, we decided to explore and analyze this question further, considering other key actors' perspectives. And so the results we obtained were 2 said yes, 3 said no, and 2 doesn't know or doesn't want to answer. This was like the 7 people that just collaborate with us. This is the key actors' answers distribution about Portuguese University Rectors Council of strategies to implement sustainability in their plans, programs or policies through the Decade for Education for Sustainable Development in the period that we just observed, 2005-2014. When we asked if the public universities' integration of sustainability implementation process from the ministry was neither by the direct transpose to university strategic plans nor by direct transpose to university activity plans, the top 5 forms of sustainability implementation in public universities, according key actors' opinion, no mutually exclusive, were or are, we may say in the present tense. First one was a communitarian fundraising for investigation. The second one was universities' proposal for affirmative offer, given their autonomy. The third one was an MIT Portugal program in 2007. The fourth one was like local initiatives. And the fifth one was like energy initiative for sustainability in Coimbra University. When we ask the key actors' opinion on decade 2005-2014 impact in Portuguese society, we got multiple and diverse perspectives. 3 out of 7 interviews agreed that there was an impact. For example, we may quote, decade had an impact in Portuguese society through the dissemination of problems and solutions in primary, secondary school systems and in university system also. Emphasize also the expression lifelong learning. This was an interview from the ministry. On the primary and on the secondary level, sustainability had an impact before decade. In the university's case, decade impacts happened for their initiative to respond to society demand, and not to government demand. And to accomplish that, universities created courses to react to the market stimuli. That was an interview from someone from the university. 2 interviews referred that there was no impact at all, and 2 out of 7 were not able to have a concrete answer, or so we classify them as doesn't know or doesn't want to answer us. So, as for the conclusions, even though the meaning of sustainability or sustainable had varied through time, when analyzing an early research, the governmental and ministerial documents, this is far more adopted and accepted concept than before, what suggested that universities they haven't had any top-down orientations about sustainable development as far as programs, plans or strategies concerns, despite the decade 2005-2014. This is in line what we had obtained when interviewing the key actors. Education was a major issue for the ministry. When analyzing the documents produced between 2005-2014, the top 10 ranking of words or tests, we found words like institutions, development, and sustainable. But the implementation of education for sustainable development was not a matter of a major importance for the ministry. Another conclusion is like the top 5 forms of sustainability implementation in public universities referred by the key actors were, like we said before, communitarian fundraising for investigation, universities' proposal for formative offer, MIT Portugal program 2007, and also local initiatives. And the last one, the 5th one is like energy initiative for sustainability from Universidade de Coimbra. So, concerning the decade for education for sustainable development 2005-2014, impact in Portuguese society, those were mainly through the dissemination of problems and solutions of lifelong learning, mostly in primary and secondary school. And as a conclusion, there seemed to be a lack of commitment from the government and the ministerial institutions towards education for sustainable development. Here, we would like to notice that 4 out of 7 of the interviews agreed on the Portuguese government integrate the sustainability in their plans, programs or policies according to 2005 International Implementation Scheme, the Education for Sustainable Development Decade. But remember, they weren't able or capable to say how. Nevertheless, before decade 2005-2014, many initiatives took place in Portugal concerning environmental education. There seem to be only few documents partially linked to sustainable development, and there haven't been any plans or programs at least integrated. Let us conclude. Surely this is quite intentional, because doubtful quality of the documentary sources, as well as the scarce number of sources we were able to gather before the interviewing survey despite our efforts. Even though key actors uncovered, published and unpublished legislation we haven't had access to before. These were the limitations of our study. We interviewed key actors and had their opinion. Second, limitations. And we consider the documentary sources as a sample, what might show the lack of commitment from the government and all institutions towards education for sustainable development. These interviews are also regarded as sample, so the samples, documentary sources as key actors interviewed cannot be regarded as representative. These are limitations that we would like to stress. What are our next steps? As we need more studies and need to move further, we have to access the plans, policies and strategies at public university level. Strategic plans, activities plans and reports, and sustainability reports also, as well as to get to know implementation practices. How are we going to do that? By documentation research. And the next step we believe is very important to do is applying a survey to the person responsible for sustainability in higher education institutions to propose strategies and policies for sustainability improvements. How are we going to do that? By a questionnaire survey. So this is our next steps we are going to do by the next 5 or 6 months. Thank you very much for your attention. Questions are most welcome.